Calling all South Carolina football fans for the entire state. Today we are here to break down the state of college football in South Carolina. Talking about two schools with very polar opposite weekends in the landscape of college football. Let's start, of course, with the South Carolina Gamecocks. We were there. We saw them upset the number 10 team in the country, Texas A&M, taken down in the SEC. It just means more. And I got to agree, man, the stadium was rocking. Post-game, I saw Virginia Tech fans that were there, that were viewing it, Texas A&M fans, everyone recommending Williams-Brice Stadium, Willie B, at night. Night game, you can't beat it. On the polar opposite end of that, we have the Clemson Tigers falling to Louisville. And now we have a question. Which one of these two teams has the best chance to make the college football playoffs? And folks, you may think, well, Clemson, ACC, easier path. They absolutely have the easier path based on schedule and trying to get there. But when we talk about easier path to actually get in, I don't know that that's the case, because Clemson has shot themselves in the foot. Devastating loss. 2 losses on the year now. You lose a home game to Louisville. You lost to Georgia. You still have some upcoming road games that are going to be tough. Going out, pulling up the schedule for the Clemson Tigers. They travel to Virginia Tech. That is never an easy game. No guarantee they can win there. Travel to Pittsburgh, and I know Pittsburgh is coming off the loss to SMU, but it is a game. Chance for a bounce back. Clean it up with the Citadel. And then we know the rivalry between South Carolina and Clemson to close out the season. So the path for Clemson, I mean, the bar is, it's going to be hard to top. Only because if you look across in the ACC standings right now, and I just had them pulled up, we have Miami at 5-0, 5-0 in the conference, 9-0 overall. SMU 5-0 in the conference, 8-1 overall. That's your path. And then, of course, Clemson, Pittsburgh, 5-1, 3-1. The bad thing for Clemson is that SMU and Miami, they're in the driver's seat. You go out and look at SMU's schedule, 3 remaining games. So they play Boston College at home. That's winnable. They should win, although it's not going to be easy. They travel to UVA. Again, that should be a winnable football game. And they close it out with Cal, University of Cal. They should win those 3 matchups. Now, things can get interesting here if SMU drops one of these, and then Clemson, of course, wins again, or wins out, I should say. Then you do have to figure out all the tie-breaking scenarios, because Clemson and SMU will not have played each other. It's not an easy path. Miami goes to Georgia Tech. That's, again, not easy. We've seen Miami be vulnerable all year, battled with Duke, but they pulled it off. Then Wake Forest at home, and then Syracuse at Syracuse. That's going to be a tough game closing out the season. But all things considered, feels like another winnable path. So worst case for the Clemson Tigers is Miami and SMU winning out, because they're not getting into the college football playoff, but they're not getting into the ACC championship game. And if we take a look at the rankings and standings, so you have Miami as the number 14, SMU at 13. So our assumptions would be if both of those win, they would remain relatively the same. So you have a top 5 team in Miami, top 12-ish team in SMU, assuming they win out. Clemson, on the other hand, who we know continues to drop, is sitting at number 19, and Pitt is at 23. Now, Clemson could have some things help them out, assuming they don't get into the championship. If they knock off Pitt, and Pitt's still ranked, if they beat Virginia Tech handedly, and then if South Carolina is ranked and they do knock them off, that also could fold into the mix. But being out of the ACC championship, worst case scenario for the Tigers, and for the ACC, you are now talking potentially one team out of the ACC making the college football playoff, and that would be the winner. But the winner of SMU and Miami. Because if you go into this game and Miami is just absolutely head and shoulders better than SMU and they blow them out by 30 or 40, we'll see when we get there. You're talking one team in the playoff, because assuming SMU's top 12, if they get obliterated, there's no way that the committee is going to look at that and say, oh yeah, let's put them in over who else is sitting in the wings. Talks a lot about Clemson. We got to talk about South Carolina. So South Carolina, this is, again, the nature of the beast. And I just had let's pull up the SEC standings. The nature of the beast is it is the most competitive conference in college football. You have South Carolina, who is 3-3 in conference play. We talked about the tough losses. 5-3 overall. In front of them, you have Georgia, who's 5-1, Texas A&M, who's 5-1, Tennessee 4-1, Texas 3-1, LSU 3-1, Ole Miss 3-2, Bama 3-2, Vandy 3-2, Missouri 2-2, and then of course we said South Carolina 3-3. South Carolina can jump in front of Missouri with a win, Vanderbilt with a win. So assuming they close this thing out at 5-3 in conference play. Where they're going to need some help is with Alabama and Ole Miss. You're going to need Alabama to drop another game or two, preferably two. Same thing with Ole Miss. You need Ole Miss and Alabama to have 4 conference losses, which that's going to be tough because they got 3 left. And so you need to have them lose 2 of the last 3 games in conference play. And then LSU, weirder things could happen. LSU has 4 conference games left, so they do have a tough sledding. Same thing with Texas. You could see weird stuff happening there. But the odds are stacked against South Carolina in the current state as it is. But talking through a potential just win out for this team, and let's say they do go on a run, and let's say they do play really good football, and some weird stuff falls, and maybe they're 6th, 5th or 6th in the SEC, but much better in some of the competition. And we know they will not have played Tennessee, Texas, or Georgia. Right? And then play Georgia. So you'll have to figure out, looking at the grand scheme of things, if there's a possibility that South Carolina makes it in. And the way I would look at this or think about it, kind of going back to last year, is think about Florida State, who is undefeated, but had a weaker conference, a weaker overall record, and didn't have their starting quarterback. I know there was a lot of circumstance around that team, but when you think about this, it's like, hey, there could be a path. Like the committee, everything is not as cut and dry as it used to be. You will have a hard time if you get down the stretch talking through how do they jump a Bama when you talk about head-to-head, or an LSU if they're still up there, or Ole Miss. Like, it's going to be hard to leapfrog over those folks. But to me, I think there's a chance. Possibly. Hey, might as well talk it into existence and see. Either way, exciting times ahead for the University of South Carolina, and it seems they're on the right track. Again, they could also, so going down the stretch here, if they knock off Vandy's ranked, at least in the AP poll. See how they come out in the college football rankings. Missouri, who's been in and out. Wofford, we know, is a wash. Best case, too, for Clemson, or for South Carolina, is Clemson to keep winning. Clemson to look competitive, and then for South Carolina to be able to knock them off. If South Carolina can get into 14, in that top 15 range by end of season as we head into the conference championship, think there would be a possibility. Now, numbers-wise, I have not played this thing out. I know we're going to have 4 teams, 4 conference champions. So that's 4 of your 12. So that leaves us with 8. Notre Dame's going to make 5. So that leaves you with 7 spots. And I know the Big Ten is competitive. But if you talk about 7 spots, maybe let's split 4. And we got to take 1 more away because of the Power 5. So 6 playoff spots. 3-3 between the SEC and Big Ten. Maybe it's 4-2 And I know people would lose their minds if the SEC got 5 in. Some people would. But again, if you're sitting around there and you get close to it, there is a chance if they can get hot and continue playing football like they are. Anyways, all that to say, it's going to be tough sledding. It's only a few weeks to go, but seeing Clemson make the playoffs may not be a possibility. Let me know what y'all think. And as always, it's a Panthers podcast. Sometimes keep pounding.